Welcome everyone. I'm Jess Welzer, Director of CIVIC and CSR, and I'm excited to welcome you to our Ask Me Anything series. This series is really created out of requests from our community. People want to hear from our active CSR professionals, how they get into the field, how they work with nonprofit partners, tidbits on trends and best practices in the space. That's really how the series came to be. And if any of those questions are on your mind, hold them just for a few minutes and we will be able to get to all of them today. Before we officially kick off, I just want to share a few housekeeping notes. Please share your comments, thoughts, and questions in the chat. We do have a few folks that may have restrictions for their organizations that you can't see the chat. Don't worry, we'll include any important information in a recap email afterwards. And questions, if you don't want to come off mute and ask them yourselves, I'll be happy to do that on your behalf, as some of our speakers don't have access to that as well. If you aren't already using the speaker view in Zoom, you can access that in the upper right-hand corner. We really recommend it as it just makes it a much better experience. But of course, if you want to see everybody's face, keep that regular view on. We do have live captions activated for this as well, so you can choose to have that displayed or not. If you need anything else, technical questions, please feel free to chat myself, Jess Welzer, or Olivia Barrows, our newest team member here at CIVIC. And once again, in case you missed it, we will be sending out an email afterwards with resources that were shared. Please expect this early next week. Last tidbit is that if you are not speaking, we ask that you do keep yourselves on mute. We will be monitoring that on our end, but it just helps us out. So what you can really expect from this session today is I'm going to pass it off to the stars of this program momentarily. And after they share their background, we're going to open it up to audience Q&A. Of course, if you don't have any questions, feel free to just listen away. If we do go through any roles, I have some questions on backup, and Erica and Jackie are no stranger to filling time with amazing expertise and insights. So they will probably just go off on amazing tangents around the CSR space. But we of course want to hear from you and what's on your mind. So now I'd officially like to pass it off to Erica and Jackie to really introduce themselves. And for quick background, Jackie Devine is Director of Community Outreach for Alpine Bank. She has been a CIVIC member since the beginning back in 2014 and currently sits on our Summit Committee as well. Erica McIntire, she is the Denver Market Executive for Bank of America, which I know doesn't sound like a CSR title, but she will definitely tell you how it is one. Erica sits on the CIVIC board and also co-chairs our programs committee. Erica, I'll let you start off. Take it away.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. This is, I know, such an honor for Jackie and I to be here. And we don't know what to expect either. We were just talking to Jess before this, like, what are we supposed to do? And what happens if they don't ask any questions? So please make sure you come with questions. But it's so nice to see all of you. And there's so many familiar faces from a lot of the community partners that we have. So great big hi to you all out there. And Jackie and I just really want to keep this informal. That's first and foremost what we want, and answer any questions that you have. We like to laugh. And like I said, we're pretty informal. So if you came here for some sort of like official conversation about it, then you probably want to move on because you're not going to get that from us, right, Jackie? So my name is Erica McIntire, and I am, I guess my region just changed. So I get to be the Colorado Market Executive, which probably means a whole lot more of nothing to anybody else. But that is one of the things that I look forward to talking about is to, if you're looking to get into this type of work, and especially looking to do good in business, that these titles come with, I should say, these jobs and these roles come with a bunch of different titles. And so what to look for, because something like Colorado Market Executive, it doesn't sound appealing and nobody would apply for that kind of role, right? But yet it's the best job in my company, I think. And so I look forward to telling you that. But I've been here for 4 years and 4 months, which went by in a flurry. Before that, I was a marketing communications director at Vector Bank, and then before that, sponsorship manager at US Bank. Before I knew it, I have 30 years in financial services, never meant to be in financial services, but here I am building a career. But I think at my heart and my background, both of my degrees are in anthropology. which, yes, I do believe, even though I'm not being paid for it, I use every single day. So that's also something about me. And I like the beach and camping and my Bernedoodle, and I have an only son who is 14. So those are all topics that are fair game. So Jackie, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. And I obviously echo everything that she said. And I see a lot of familiar faces too. I'm so glad that you all joined us. And so Jackie Devine, Director of Community Outreach for Alpine Bank, another, title that these titles, just like Erica said, we all have something different. So keep your mind open when you're looking for these jobs. They look a lot different everywhere. But so I have been with Alpine Bank for a little over 6 years, but some could say a lifetime, because my dad actually worked for the company for 40 years. So I feel lucky that I get to work there now. It's kind of coming full circle, but I have a very different background. So I got my degree in restaurant resort management and worked for Hyatt Hotels and started my career in Kauai, Hawaii with them. So I spent about 1.5 years there, then came back to Colorado and decided that the hospitality industry was great, but the 24/7 business just wasn't going to work for the life that I wanted. And Alpine Bank decided they were moving over to the Eastern Slope, and I knew everything about Alpine. And so I knew that I would be perfect for this if they would just give me a chance. And honestly, I got lucky and it fit perfect. So I feel really lucky to work for them every day. And I have 2 little girls who are 3 and 1 that when I'm not working for Alpine and, not doing other things in the community, I'm always with them and I love them so much. And I also have a Yorkie poo. So again, we're similar, dogs and family and CSR. That's all we do. No.
That's it. That's all there is to life.
Right?
All right. Well, folks, if you do have questions, put them in the chat, but I will officially kick it off with one of my own. If there's one piece of advice you could give to someone looking to enter the field, what would it be? And I know you've kind of touched on some of these things, but officially one piece. I know it's hard.
Well, I'll give a pitch for, I think, getting into the community that you eventually want to build a career into or build a network around is number one. And I'll have to give a pitch for B-Civic. Being on the board, I think I would lose my board seat if I didn't give a pitch for B-Civic. So B-Civic is an organization that brings you together with like-minded individuals and also companies that are doing good while they're doing business, right? So putting yourself smack dab at the intersection of that, you build your community, you're building your brand, and you're building your knowledge. So that'd be the number one thing that I would say. Jackie.
Yeah, I would echo that. And my buzzword is relationships. That the more relationships that you can build with people, the better. And because you never know when the opportunity will come up. And I think, the for-profit, nonprofit, there is a lot of overlap, right? So I think if you're working in a nonprofit and you want to go to for-profit or vice versa, that there is a lot of transfer that can happen there too. So just continue to create relationships, be in the communities, absolutely, and make authentic relationships.
Absolutely. And I want to add one more thing, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Pete just joined the call, but I have to also give a pitch for the corporate social responsibility certificate from the CU Lead School of Business. And that's where I met Kaylin. Yes, I see Nancy giving a thumbs up, but it's an amazing program. First of all, it's this great baseline across everything that professes to be CSR, which it just blows your mind. You get to figure out the pieces where you're not strong. Like, I am not strong in reporting. It's, even though Pete made that class interesting, it's just not something that did it for me. So you learn across everything. And then, so getting your CCSR is a number one, and Pete is one of the instructors. So if you have any questions, you can ask him. So I think I've done all my advertising maybe, but there's probably still more in me.
Well, and you need to attend the summit coming up in November.
There you are.
You both are definitely getting your gold stars from B-Civic today. Well, we're still waiting on some more questions from the audience. I would love to just talk to you both about nonprofit partnerships. You both have amazing community organizations you work with. How does somebody get involved with one of your organizations, and what does it look like to be a great partner? That's a two-parter.
I'll start that
You want to
one.
start, Jackie?
Yeah. So I think I love this part of my job of, creating these community relationships and working with nonprofit partners. And I think that each one of them looks a little bit different. So when somebody is interested in starting a relationship with Alpine, I think it comes down to, what is the synergy that exists there, right? Do we have, people who serve on the board? Do we, support financial services in some way, or education? There's certain things like that I feel like there has to be some sort of potential relationship that can be had there. What's the second part of the question, Jess?
The second part is, so it's what's the good partner look like, and how would somebody get involved with Alpine or Bank of America?
I think a good, solid partnership is one that there are multiple points of, I don't know the exact word, but if there is mutually beneficial relationships on both sides. So obviously we want to have people who are our customers or clients, and also we want to showcase that partnership to the community. A lot of what we do is for the philanthropy piece of it, but also, I want people to know what we're doing, because that brings benefit to the bank. We do what we do for profit. We are not nonprofit. So essentially we want more customers and we want more clients in the doors. And, one of the ways is creating those partnerships, having people serve on the board, volunteers, all those different points of connection, I think, are what make a great partnership.
Absolutely. I'll pick up with what Jackie is talking about too. I often say we don't drive-by relationships. So it's not like we would just want to make a grant and then we don't want to hear from you until next year when you ask for money again. I think approaching any company for support or for some sort of involvement, you should just kind of be open to a conversation, because you may be entering to understand their philanthropic investments and the grants, but you may be, maybe I'm looking for something in a sponsorship area or community involvement or boards, like you're talking about, Jackie. And so being able to sit down and really, like you said, talking about a full involvement, let me know what your goals are, what your mission is. I'll tell you about my goals and what I'm looking for. And then it feels like naturally, as you're building on that relationship, like Jackie was talking about in the last question, you kind of connect and figure out where it makes sense. I think the other thing I always want to say too is that do your homework. All of our information is out there on the website. Very probably, we're transparent. We all have focus areas. Every single company is going to be, these are our 4 pillars or 3 pillars, or this is what we want to fund. Do your homework on that, and then accept that if it's not a good fit. I have a lot of organizations that are doing backflips, and backbends trying to fit into the priorities. And certainly I never discourage any organization from trying to create a partnership, but if it's worth your time, it's worth mine. But understand also that you can't be all things to all people, and you have to kind of make the investments in specific focus areas.
I was going to say that too, of a lot of the organizations are great, most of them, right? Everybody has the best intentions, and we cannot support everyone. So I think that's one of the hardest things that I deal with, is saying no, but I do have to say no a lot, right? And that's just kind of a piece of it too. So just saying exactly what you said there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I always say this, I end my conversations, I don't know if you do, Jackie, but I'm pretty honest usually, it feels like you're falling outside of my geography or my focus areas. But I want to know what you do. I want to know what you're good at, how you're serving the community, what your mission is, because I want to share your message. I want to be an ambassador for your organization as I meet with others and be able to share it. So if I can't fund you, maybe Jackie can, maybe Lori can over at BOKF. So I'll send you her way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All about relationships and community. All right, well, don't worry, we have a full house of questions now. I'm going to toss this one over to Nancy with Christian Living Communities. If you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Sure. So my question is, as a nonprofit, when creating proposals for a for-profit or a company, do you encourage us to create a CSR plan of our own to include going along the SDG goals and our target points when building that relationship? It's something that I've started to do with our organization and just looking at other nonprofits to see how we match up so we don't have that drive-by relationship, which I think is a really good point. And that would be different from an annual report. This would be a little bit deeper and a long-term goal.
And Nancy, do you mean like creating and meaning internalizing CSR for Christian living communities?
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, like picking like one or two of those goals and then drilling it down to a target and then seeing who would match up as a good community partner for us when presenting what we're trying to fund or what our capital campaign might look like, and really kind of having that CSR plan be part of our foundation for the ask.
That's an interesting one. I mean, I think everybody should be engaged in this work, all sectors. So we have not, Bank of America has not got, I don't believe in our grant application, we've actually asked the types of questions about your commitment to CSR or ESG. We do ask racial equity questions. And so understanding that your organization needs to look like the communities you seek to serve. And so those are questions that we are asking, which is certainly a piece of that CSR plan. We've just not gotten down to understanding what are your scope 1 and scope 2, measures, but how would you answer, Jackie?
Yeah, I was thinking actually almost exactly what you were saying. We like to see demographic information. That is a huge piece for us because as a bank, we have certain things that we have to meet too. So it can actually, be beneficial to have that included. I mean, not always, right? It doesn't always have to matter, but I think it's just something that is an added benefit. But I don't think you necessarily have to drill down that deep. For me, I don't have to see that. So yeah.
A good question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Already. Jeez, guys.
All right. Well, I've got another one on behalf of Bojinka Bishop. When it comes to stakeholders and your CSR training, for both of your organizations, are all stakeholders included in trainings that you do, or only are they involved if it's more focused on volunteerism and philanthropy?
So basically the question is, as a company as a whole, are we all invested in this strategy and what we're doing from corporate social responsibility?
Yes, and if you
May I clarify? Actually, it's to both you and I guess to Pete. When in your programs, is your CSR basically focused on employee volunteerism and philanthropy, or is there a broader perspective of addressing all stakeholders in terms of engagement and communication? Maybe not in your role, but I'm curious how CSR is focused, whether it's mostly volunteerism and philanthropy, or whether there are broader aspects in terms of environment, et cetera.
I will just say for Bank of America, I mean, so banks have a risk framework, right? Just that's what banks are about, is mitigating risk. And we have an entire ESG framework that goes through our entire organization. And so ESG is a lens that we look at every piece of our business, including our growth in each of the communities. And one of the things that we just launched was called Approach to Zero, which is now working. This is kind of our lending streams are now working with clients in order to help them with their ESG approach to zero. And so there's a whole lending stream, products now, and consultant type approach to help our clients also reach net zero targets. So I'll turn that over to Jackie now.
Yeah, that's amazing, Erica. I love to hear that. And I would echo those comments too. And it's the same at Alpine. Like it is one of our, like one of the things our founder implemented when he started Alpine Bank 50 years ago. And so we have, made the clear decision to get our ISO 14001 certification, things that make us environmentally, conscious. I mean, as a bank, we're not like huge energy users compared to others, but, we do have ways that we can continue to help the environment and all of that. And so, yes, I think volunteerism and philanthropy they take more of a in your face approach. Like they're the things that are more visible, and then all those other things are still happening, and they're definitely part of our culture.
Okay, thank you.
Great. All right, Amanda with the Denver Zoo, I'm gonna hand this over to you to ask your question.
Thank you. So I'm curious how you see CSR evolving over the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, lots of things have changed in everyone's lives over the last, 2.5, 3 years, something like that with the pandemic. But, I think with most nonprofit and corporate relationships, we're kind of, in a little bit of an upswing after that. But how do you see kind of this work changing over the next 5 to 10 years?
Do you want to start, Jackie?
I think that, honestly, I was thinking about this earlier, the past 3 years and what it has looked like. I was thinking some days I felt useless, right? Like there was nothing that I could do. And then other days it was like full speed ahead. The world is changing, like, let's go. And I feel like things have leveled out quite a bit, but I see it going to this kind of like more like holistic yearly sponsorship approach of partnership. It's not necessarily like the one-offs or you're doing this one event, this one volunteer thing. It's like, you're a champion for our organization, and this is the way we want to have this partnership go for the entire year. I don't know, 5 to 10 years, we'll probably be doing something totally different. And I have no idea. I can't even see that far, but I'm thinking the next year, that's where I see right now. So Erica, what do you think?
Oh, well, and I think it's interesting, you were taking an outward approach that this might be what our CSR or ESG looks like from the company outward. And I definitely agree with you that holistic approach, absolutely. It needs, and I was talking about that it is a framework. It's the thing I think that it's evolved and that we'll see a current evolution on is that it's not a role. There's not a CSR person that is responsible for, let's check the box and make sure that they're doing the E, doing the S, and doing the G. Like that's not how it is anymore. And I think you're seeing through that in a lot of companies. I know in Pete's class, again, we learned about greenwashing, that you can spot that, right? You can spot when it's an ad. What are those questions that we need to understand if a company is really committed to this work? And first and foremost, how is it being permeated through the entire organization, all the way down, just like we were talking about, to all of the employees? Can the employees talk about their company's ESG commitment, not just point to the person who's got that title? And how are they talking about it? How are they living it? And, back to Bojinka, what your question was, all of our employees are given access to this wide range. We have an ESG college inside of Bank of America, and it's an entire training module that you can go through and, take all of these different classes, all of them online, of course, but a lot of them are being augmented with webinars and different live speakers that you can ask questions like this. And, whether it's in diversity or whether it's in net zero or whether it is about our philanthropic investments in workforce, whatever it happens to be. And I think that's the true test. That's the evolution, I think, Amanda, that I'd like to see even more, is that we're all living it. We're breathing it. It's all of our responsibility. And it may sound cliche, but the idea that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And you may be an underwriter, but you still have a responsibility.
Yeah, well said. Yeah.
I hope we're actually answering the questions. I feel like we like riff and then are we answering them? Okay, thanks, Amanda.
These are fantastic answers. And I think we are answering questions. So we will get to ESG in a little bit later. So make sure that we're going to be making sure that we save time for a few additional questions on that. But just taking these in order. So next up, we're going to go back to the career pathway for CSR. So Kyle asked a great question. How would you leverage these authentic relationships you have to communicate your experience without directly asking for a CSR job?
I think that's a really good question. And I think about that a lot, just because, you know, maybe I don't want to stay at this company or this job forever. Maybe I want to see where that will take me next too. I think I love the idea of like showcasing partnerships. So Erica and I were talking about this earlier too, even our LinkedIn of like, we put a lot of the things that we do in the community on there. And it's just that everybody else in our network and other nonprofits or corporations can see that. So I think that I guess that's one way that I've tried to kind of like outwardly showcase it. I don't know. I don't think there's any problem in just asking sometimes too. Be a little forward.
Is that what you mean, Kyle? Like you want a job at Bank of America. So
I'd love one if you're offering. Yeah.
I'm just handing them out. Yeah.
Generally, I'm just curious. I've been in the nonprofit world for 10 years, which compared to a lot of people on this call probably isn't all that much, but I've met a lot of great people at networking events and other fundraisers. And so again, like how do you leverage those relationships with your current job that you've created those relationships through your current job without, you know, them getting back to your current employer and saying, hey, your employee just asked for a job.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. I guess the other thing is, and I'll keep going back, Jackie, you kicked off our call by talking about relationships, and that's what it's about, right? We are a tiny little community. Denver is this big, right? And everybody knows everybody else. But I think it's awesome to be able to just go for coffee and talk to somebody about like, how did you get from point A to point B? And do what you're doing, and what do you like about it, and what's your worst day, what do you hate about it? And that's just, and I love being able to make connections. I'm a dot connector, right? So I want to know you, and I want to know like what is it that you're looking for, whether it's for you personally and your career satisfaction and happiness, or whether it's for your nonprofit. Like just help me. And then I carry that with me as I go into other meetings and then making connections. That's what I love. I love being able to say, oh, you know what? You've got that position open. It's not his industry, but maybe Kyle would be interested in something like that. And that's just a genuine interest in helping rather than, you know, I hope that's making sense, but ask somebody out for coffee.
Well, and it's like, yeah, you want to be the person that they think of, right? When they're having that conversation. And so I think it's, just continuing to stay in touch with people and making like, again, genuine relationships, like, and care about what people are actually doing in their life beyond their job, right? And who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just give a quick shout out to the CIVIC newsletter. Bi-weekly, we try to include a job roundup. So Kyle, if you do have interest, feel free to respond back to us. Sometimes we know the people, sometimes we don't, but we are a community here. We want to keep growing it.
Absolutely.
So Erica, I've got a really quick question for you. Can people get access to your ESG training college outside of Bank of America?
I don't know. I know it's on our intranet, but let me find out if there's any plans to push that externally, because I think it would be an incredible resource. So good question. I will find out.
All right. And Carly, I'm going to pass it over to you. I know you have a question or two in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Hi, Erica and Jackie. Good to see you both. So my question is around reporting. How are you each approaching reporting on impact as it relates to your philanthropic investments? Is that being done in-house? Or are you working with external partners on that?
You want to go first, Jackie?
Sure. Well, so Alpine Bank is privately held. So we are employee owned. And so we don't have a formal reporting structure for this. So we do it all internally and then report that to our primary stakeholders that way. So we're a little bit different being a smaller bank.
And Bank of America has oodles of reporting. I mean, we put out an ESG impact report every year. And so there are multiple streams of data that are kind of going into that, and people smarter than I am that are in charge of that. As far as our philanthropic investments on a local basis, much of the information starts with our system that collects the grant application. So we use Cyber Grants. I know there's a bunch of different systems out there, but Cyber Grants is the system that we use. And so when you put your application in and we collect information on both your organizational profile and then also on the application that you're asking, some of the details that Jackie was talking about earlier, like we've begun collecting more and more details about your, not just your statistics with regard to your board composition or those that you are serving, but also, you know, what's your commitment? Do you have a commitment to diverse hiring? Just kind of asking all of those. Are you serving primarily, you know, Latinx communities or African American communities? What, you know, I think it's starting a lot with diversity, but then we're moving into some of the other areas to collect that information. But it all starts with the grant application system.
Great. So I'm going to ask one from Micah, who's currently sounds like he's enjoying vacation in Massachusetts. So enjoy some sun over there for us. If you have, hopefully you have sun there, because we don't really have any today here. But he said this is definitely a harder one, so brace yourself. Is there something about your roles with the overall field you wish you could change? And what would that change look like?
I know mine. I want more money. I always want more money. That's right. I see shaking heads. It never goes far enough. There's never enough. My boss put in my performance evaluation to decrease the number of organizations that I grant to each year and increase the overall grant amount. And I said, challenge accepted. And then it came to the first round of grants, and it's harder. Jackie, you talked about saying no all the time, and I know that's part of our job is to say no nicely, but there's so many organizations out there doing such great work. And I have a hard time, and I don't like being put in the position of having to I know these grants of like $5,000 and $10,000 here and there. I understand conceptually that giving an organization $50,000, $100,000 and going deeper into one of those organizations allows them to have a bigger impact. But there's just so many, we have just such an incredibly amazing nonprofit community that it's just hard to say no. So I hate saying no. That is the worst part of my job. So Jackie?
I was like literally thinking the same thing. Like, I wish I had millions and millions of dollars to be able to give out. So, and I wish that I wish that this role was seen as you're a senior executive in the company. That's one of the other things. I think Erica is, so that's great for her, but right. But I think a lot of these jobs there's not a ton of growth. And so I wish that there was a lot of growth, and I wish that you had 10 people doing it within each company, because I think that, you could be like changing the world. So I think that's one of the other things that I wish that there was.
Good question, Micah. Throw us the hard ones.
All right, Marcia, I'll toss it over to you for your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. 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 Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much. First off, I'm just, I don't know. I feel like I'm eating cherry pie with a little ice cream on top, just listening to the conversations in the room, because many of you, I mean, some faces look familiar, and I certainly appreciate this, but I wanted to speak to Erica and Jackie's comment about, certainly Erica wants to make more money, and there's more grant funding that can be available. But I have taken the approach of just being really, really supportive of partnerships, of bringing organizations together, not forcing people to work with people, but it's just been my experience coming from homelessness to home ownership that these partnerships is critical. And when we can speak to a level of allowing individuals to know it's not about one nonprofit versus another, and here's another one, it's about the overall solution to support the families or people in need. And so I am asking this question in a long way, apparently. I'm a little long-winded, but I just would like to know in terms of having the funding capabilities, knowing that, it's only so many dollars out there, as Jackie made it and Erica made known, but also how to, instead of it being a competitive market, show the compassion to join together. More so, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but instead of it being competitive, because I in my day job, I do some grant funding, and we've got people that feel like they're competing against another nonprofit for this X amount of dollars, when in fact, if we join together, we can do this greater thing. So do you have some processes where you are not giving any awards or anything like that, but supporting a stronger partnership for that funding level?
Oh, I've got so many, Jackie. Can I start? Because I'm just like, great question, Marcia. So there's so many examples I want to give, but one of them I'm going to start with, and me and a bunch of my bank friends featured this at last year's CIVIC Summit. And so we called it Competitors Who Collaborate. And so this is one example, and I'm going to come at it from two ends. And you haven't heard long-winded yet, Marcia. Wait till I get through these examples. But so we, my friend Marcia Romero over at US Bank and my friend Lauren Hornet over at Wells Fargo, we all individually fund DHA and resident services over there. And so we knew Renee over there, and we individually made them, and just as any nonprofit does, right? You submit all of these grant organizations all for the same thing. And so we were talking with Renee, and we had heard all separately that she wanted to fund a financial education class in resident services at DHA. And so she had told us individually. And so Lauren and Marcia and I got together and said, hey, she can't do it alone. And why would we put up 15 different hoops for her to jump through? And so we got together and we said, well, let's figure out how we talk to our banking partners that have financial, that's one of every single bank in town, that's what we want to fund, is that financial empowerment and financial education. And so we got a bunch of banks together and we funded a navigator position over at DHA so that she could start that programming with resident services. So that was competitors coming together, pooling funds to fund something at a nonprofit. That's one example. And then the second example I'll give is that I work with enterprise community partners on the housing front. And this is a sponsorship, but they were doing a great job with really documenting redlining in our community. And they did all of this work, and there was a national exhibit that came through that they sponsored about redlining and the effects of redlining. I don't know if you caught that exhibit, but it was this overlay of the redlining in Denver, and you could overlay the heat index, and it's the inverted L. You could overlay poverty, and it's the inverted L. And every single indicator is a result of, the origin of that was redlining. And so they did all of this work, and it was going to be put on a shelf. And then I found out from History Colorado that they were, a year ago, they were doing this Building Denver exhibit, which redlining was going to be a focus of it. And so putting those two partners together and said, I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure you guys need to work together. And so having them talk, and then so Enterprise's redlining work is actually at History Colorado, and they are a partner, and they're contributing so that that material, that important information, has a longer shelf life. So those are two examples, and I'm sure Jackie has others.
Well, I'd like to just tell you that you are speaking to a direct recipient of everything that you may mention, Erica, and it often brings me lots of joy. I was a commissioner at DHA. I work with Renee specifically. I am the recipient of all of those things that you just made mention with regards to all those partnerships. And that is how I got my platform from homelessness to home ownership. So it means a lot to me to hear you say that. And even Marcia Romero at US Bank has been in the forefront of this partnership. Wells Fargo, the LIFT grant, the strengthening, all of the funding opportunity, the match funding, and all of these partnerships is what has brought me to this place where I'm at right now. So I really appreciate you, and thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty incredible. And Erica, everything that you've done, I wish Alpine Bank was involved in that. I remember hearing about you guys doing that, and I was just like, that was so incredible that you guys all came together to do that. So, and I think when it comes to nonprofits specifically, that a lot of you and a lot of the community do different things, right? And so there can be a lot of cross collaboration, and we don't have to just support one organization that does one thing at different times. I think there's a variety of organizations doing a variety of different things to serve different needs, and that they can cross over. And I think that when we do Alpine Bank grand openings, we always feature nonprofits, and I've had 3 different nonprofits at those events. And so it's like, there's no competition. They're all there for the same reason, to be a part of the community that we're serving. And so I think that that's one of the things that I don't know. I love that about our community. It doesn't seem like that there is a ton of competition, which I appreciate. But I'm on the other side.
Need to go around.
Yeah.
I'm constantly amazed by the amazing work that both of you two do for our communities and all the different ways that you show up. And thank you for sharing your story too, Marcia. That was amazing. So next up, I'm going to ask a question. We're going to take it back to getting into the CSR field. How much experience does somebody actually need as a new CSR practitioner to enter a position or enter into this field?
Erica, you take this one first.
I mean, I guess you need enough to convince somebody to hire you, right? Yeah. I mean, aside, as I said, from getting your CCSR, I think it's the credentials are something you get to put on your business card, you get to put on your LinkedIn profile, but beyond that, you get this platform, this cross section of just knowledge that you get to carry into all the conversations, right? And then you're meeting other practitioners, which I believe you can learn as much from them, as you can from textbooks, just building your network, surrounding yourself in the people that are doing this work, surrounding yourself in the work, with the nonprofits, I feel is really important. And then figuring out how you package that, because you can believe in yourself and the kind of work you're doing, but then you got to convince somebody else to hire you, right? And that's part of it. So I think packaging those skills, and that's what we talk about, right? You can't just start with your education. That's what I'm telling my 14-year-old. Like, it really doesn't matter what kind of degree you get. It's how you're applying it and how you're packaging those skill sets together and how you're marketing yourself. So getting involved, that experience in the work and being able to package it and sell it. I don't know how else to answer that too. It's a good question. Jackie, what would you say?
I think you said it very well, that it is, I think regardless of the background that you come from or the, things that you have done, there are different skills that are transferable, right? Like in coming from hospitality, a lot of what I do is like what I did was customer service and dealing with people. And a lot of that's what I do now. So there's just a lot of that transfers over. I mean, I think when it comes to like corporate responsibility, specifically, that every company has a different idea of what that looks like. They have a different idea of how much experience you should come with. Do you need to know communications? Do you need to know marketing? Do you need to know all those other things that go with it, right? And so I think that, I don't know, in my job, I have learned by doing a lot, and leaning on my peers and colleagues. And so I think that's helped, but I think it's just, getting lucky, getting somebody to hire you, right? Yeah.
That's a great one. And these are the people to know. Jackie and Erica are some of the best around. So we have a few more questions, and I know we're starting to get to the close of time. So if you do have another question you want to ask, just throw it in the chat now, please, and thank you. A question coming from Joy. Studies seem to suggest that millennials drove CSR and essentially helped make it happen today. Are you both seeing that Gen Z is doing the same and helping push CSR?
Oh God, I thought for sure. I thought you're going to ask, are you a millennial or something? Yeah, I wasn't sure where the question was going. I love the next generations, and I didn't start out loving them, but I love the impact that the millennials and Gen Z and whatever letters we're on next are having on our workforce, and the challenges that they're raising. I was just saying to somebody yesterday that the mission that this generation is carrying in, and the challenges that my work is not separate from my personal, and I have to be true to who I am and work for somebody. I don't leave that at home. I'm bringing that whole self to work. And so if I can't ethically work for you, I can't. It's just that is as much as that's part of the compensation package. It is part of what they're bringing to the workforce, and I just love that about it. So I agree with the whole question too.
Yeah, it's created a pretty big shift. And I think that's why a lot of companies are like, we have to have a strategy around what we're doing, right? What is our volunteerism and our community support look like? And all of these things that they had to take a deep dive into if they wanted to get an educated workforce. So I think that's it. I think I'm with you there, Erica. I wasn't sure about it, but I have that mindset. I am of a little bit younger generation, and I came with, I want to work for a company that it's not just a job, but it's a part of who I am. And I love shouting from the rooftops that I work for Alpine Bank, and I love, presenting with that wherever I go. And so I completely understand, this generation wanting to feel the same way. So hopefully we can all provide that at our companies, and hopefully more will do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right, we've got about 3 questions left here. So this one's from Bojinka, so please jump in if this is not fully accurate. She is curious if some of the nonprofits are asking recipients or companies what they want or need. So kind of community input is what I have.
I'm not sure I understand, Bojinka. Do you want to clarify? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. This is a question for the nonprofits. I'm curious how many of them get input from their recipients or their communities on what they would like. In other words, what services would be most important to them. Does that make sense? Nonprofits? Or
we get to shut up.
Yeah, even in your CSR thing, is that something you would consider? Like if somebody said, we've done some research on our recipients. We've done some surveys. We've done some communications. And these are the kinds of things they want. And therefore, we'd like money from you to help pay for them. Would that strengthen, I guess it's two sides, would that strengthen your or their position in terms of getting a grant, and or do all the nonprofits or many of them do that? Does that make sense?
I'll answer the first part, which it's a requisite for me. You have to, there has to be a voice in there. How are you defining what the needs are? But nonprofits.
Okay, great.
I was just going to say something. Definitely, we turn to the recipients in the community who are receiving our services. So I work for Young Americans Center, which is financial literacy. But for just as an example, right now we're conducting a needs assessment in rural areas throughout Colorado. Just like it's actually happening right now. So going to the different, 4 different areas around Colorado and questioning the, doing interviews and focus groups and so on with school districts and just members of the community to say, what, types of financial literacy programs do you need and want? So that's just one example I want to throw out there.
Great.
Yeah, I can also chime in. I'm with the Women's Foundation of Colorado, and we pick who we're granting funds to and also the policies and legislation that we're supporting based off of our grantee partners in the community and community stakeholders that are coming back to us and saying, these are the biggest issues areas that women and their families are facing. And that helps us address what to fund, how much to fund, and where to put our resources.
Right. Super. Thank you.
Yeah, Young Americans and Women's Foundation, 2 amazing organizations that Alpine Bank partners with. So.
Well, to keep us moving, Nancy, if you want to ask your question next, and then Kaylin, you'll be back up for your final one.
Sure, thank you. So I went through the LEADS CSR certification, awesome course. If anyone hasn't done that yet, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. But post certification, are there organizations that you would recommend who are CSR focused that someone could volunteer for to build up their skill set and actually be doing the impact work?
CIVIC is one. I also love the CSR network. So the Center for Ethics, Social Responsibility, they have an alumni network. So if you go through the program, getting involved, again, that is just an extension of the community. So, and they have a great newsletter that just keeps you, I just asked this question, in fact, I think, was it in something recently? I think I asked it of you, Jess. I said, where do you go to get information into your email box that keeps you fresh and kind of up to date on what some of the issues are? And Jeff made me an entire list of e-newsletters that you can get. And so I subscribe to all of them. Now, I almost regret it, but because your inbox is full. But if you can just kind of scan it really quickly, it really does kind of keep you fresh on what each of the, a roundup of what's going on just globally. With what some of the topics are, and that has helped a lot. So I'll also give you a little pitch for that. Maybe you could shoot some of them into, Business for Good and some of the CSR stuff. But that really helps as a practitioner to keep your skills sharp.
Yeah, I need that list, Jess, because I think we were talking about Boston College has a good one too that they send. So.
Thank you.
Hi, Kaylin.
Hi, how are you? It's good to see you. So many familiar faces. My question is kind of around, I guess, the scarcity of CSR positions. And it seems kind of counterintuitive with how fast CSR is growing and how much more obligated businesses are becoming to be to report on ESG and diversity and all these different things. And so I'm just kind of wondering, what you guys think in terms of how do we get these larger corporations to grow their teams? Because I think when there's a massive business with huge net worth and they only have 1 to 2 people in charge of their CSR, ESG, employee engagement, environmental, like it just doesn't seem feasible. So curious your thoughts on that, I guess, kind of like a triple loaded question, but.
I say the first thing is, I mean, what drives business, right? Business. So you as a consumer wield a lot of power. I mean, if you've got all the banks in town to choose from, are you choose one that's doing this work, and then that kind of, put your money there. That's the power that we have as consumers. And like I won't let my kid eat at Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A does Spirit Night, and Chick-fil-A is like where all the kids go to hang out. And I'm the bad mom. I won't let them eat at Chick-fil-A. But that's one thing I can do to support or not support a company's business. I don't know if that helps, Caitlin.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Jackie? These positions are seen as a cost center, right? We don't technically make money for the company, even though I would say we are the biggest money makers because we are the positive image that is for the company in the community and to everyone. But technically it is seen as a cost center, right? We're not making the loans and bringing in the deposits for the most part. So I think that's one of the things that's also tough too, is making that business case of why it's important that this exists and why we need to continue to grow it. And I know that the company I work for is very receptive to that, right? It is a part of our culture. It is who we are. They believe in it. And so I feel very fortunate to have that. But I know a lot of companies, that are just starting in this space, right, that are trying to have to like push that forward. So that's my 2 cents.
I would also say you got to start somewhere, right? So a company that maybe just has one position, or where that's one of the things we talked about. Just pick a place. If it's volunteerism, if it's grant making, just start and go from there.
This has been fantastic. I know one of my favorite quotes that I've heard is every dollar you spend is a vote for the way you want to see the world. And Erica, I feel like you just said that in such a different way. I love it.
Yeah, but you said it so better.
Well, somebody else's quote.
Love that one.
So folks, I know we're at the end of time, and I just would love it if you could join me in giving Jackie and Erica a round of applause, whether with your hands, reaction, something like that. They have shared so much wisdom and expertise with us in this last hour. I know what one of the somebody said in the chat is that this has been so enlightening. Thank you so much for one of the more engaging Zoom meetings I've been a part of lately. That's exactly how I feel. That's why I love hosting the series. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today. We do have some upcoming BCIVIC events coming up, and I know we're at time. So be sure to check out our newsletter or the recap email coming out early next week with all of those great opportunities you can join, including the CSR certification course. Also an alumni of that program, and can say it's one of the best experiences I've had in this space. And there's still spots in the in-person class, which I know we've all taken, or many of us here have. So just thank you again, and have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Bye.